Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. God's call to Abraham to leave his homeland and family is seen as the beginning of a unique relationship between God and Abraham's descendants. The promise to make Abraham into a great nation, Hebrew, goy, is understood as referring specifically to the nation of Israel, which would come from Abraham's lineage. The use of the term goy in this passage is significant because it demonstrates that the concept of a nation in the Bible can refer to a specific people group, in this case, the Israelites. This understanding is crucial to the exclusives doctrine, which emphasizes the distinct identity and role of Israel in God's plan. Moreover, the exclusives doctrine interprets the blessings and promises given to Abraham as being exclusive to his descendants, the children of Israel. These blessings include the promise of a land, Canaan, numerous descendants, and being a source of blessing to the chosen of God. The doctrine asserts that these promises are not extended to all nations or peoples, but are reserved for the Israelites alone. The Israelites only. In this passage, the Hebrew word goy is used to describe the great nation that God promises to make from Abraham's descendants. This nation is clearly referring to the children of Israel, not non-Israelite Gentiles. And the Lord said unto her, Two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Here, the Hebrew word goyim, plural of goy, is used to describe the two nations in Rebekah's womb, which are Jacob and Esau. Both of these individuals were from the seed line of Isaac, the Hebrew. Isaac is one of the three patriarchs of the Israelites and an important figure in the Abrahamic covenant. Jacob was chosen over his brother Esau. Genesis 25:23 is a significant verse that reveals God's sovereign choice and the fulfillment of his promise to Abraham's descendants. In this verse, God speaks to Rebekah, saying, Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. This prophecy given to Rebekah during her pregnancy with twins, Esau and Jacob, demonstrates that God had a predetermined plan for the two brothers and the nations that would descend from them. It also shows that God's choice is not based on human merit or birth order, but on his sovereign will and purpose. The statement that the older will serve the younger goes against the conventional cultural norms of that time, where the older son typically had the birthright and the position of prominence. This verse is a clear example of how God always has a chosen lineage through which he will fulfill his promises, as he did with Abraham's descendants. It is through Jacob, the younger son, that God would establish his covenant people, the nation of Israel, and ultimately bring forth the Messiah, Jesus Christ. This verse demonstrates God's faithfulness to his promises and his sovereign choice in using imperfect individuals to accomplish his perfect plan. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. In this verse, the Hebrew word goy is used to describe Israel as a nation. If we were to replace nation with Gentile here, it would imply that Israel would cease from being Gentiles before God, which is clearly not the intended meaning. In this specific verse, God declares that the nation of Israel will continue to exist before him forever, just as the ordinances of the sun, moon, and stars will continue to function according to his design. The Hebrew word used for nation in this verse is goy, which is the same word often translated as Gentile in other contexts. This usage of goy in reference to Israel demonstrates that the term does not always refer to non-Israelite nations, but can also be used to describe the nation of Israel itself. If we were to replace nation with Gentile in this verse, it would read, If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a Gentile before me forever. This interpretation would be nonsensical, as it would imply that Israel could somehow cease to be non-Israelite. Instead, the verse is emphasizing the permanence of Israel's identity as a nation before God. It suggests that, Just as the celestial bodies follow the ordinances set in place by the Creator, the children of Israel will continue to be recognized as a distinct nation by God, in accordance with His covenant promises. This verse highlights the importance of understanding the context and the original Hebrew words when interpreting biblical passages. The use of goy in this verse, which is typically associated with non-Israelite nations, demonstrates that the term has a broader meaning and can refer to Israel as well. By recognizing this nuance, we can better grasp the intended message of the passage, which is God's unwavering commitment to His chosen people, Israel. And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that feareth God, and of good report among all the nation of the Jews, was warned from God by an holy angel to send for thee into his house, and to hear words of thee. In this New Testament example, the Greek word ethnos, singular of ethne, is used to describe the Judean nation. Replacing nation with Gentile would result in the nonsensical phrase, Gentile of the Jews. Acts 10:22 reads, And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that feareth God, and of good report among all the nation of the Jews, was warned from God by an holy angel to send for thee into his house, and to hear words of thee. This verse is part of a larger narrative in which God directs the Apostle Peter to share the gospel with Cornelius, a Roman centurion. In this verse, the messengers sent by Cornelius describe him as a just man who fears God and is well respected among the entire nation of the Jews. The Greek word used for nation in this passage is ethnos, which is often translated as Gentile in other contexts. However, the use of ethnos in this verse clearly refers to the Judean people, not non-Israelites Gentiles. If we were to replace nation with Gentile, the verse would read, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that feareth God, and of good report among all the Gentile of the Jews. This interpretation would be self-contradictory, as it would suggest that Cornelius was well respected among non-Judean Jews, which is an impossible concept. This verse is part of a larger narrative that demonstrates God's desire to extend the gospel message beyond the Judeans to the scattered lost tribe, the lost generation of the northern kingdom. By directing Peter to visit Cornelius, God shows that the gospel is intended for the cursed Israelites who were thought to have lost their covenant blessings. The fact that Cornelius, whom many Christian believers falsely believe was a heathen, a non-Israelite, is described as a just man who fears God and is well respected among the Judeans, underscores the idea that God's grace and salvation are available to all Israelites who seek Him, irrespective of their cultural or ethnic identity. Now after many years I came to bring alms to my nation, and offerings. Here, Paul uses the Greek word ethnos to refer to his own nation, the Israelites. If we were to interpret ethnos as Gentile in this context, it would suggest that Paul, a self-identified Israelite, was bringing alms to non-Israelite Gentiles, which is not the case. These examples illustrate how the words translated as Gentile or nation in the Bible can refer to both Israelite and non-Israelite groups, depending on the context. It is important to consider the original Hebrew and Greek words and their broader meanings to accurately understand the intended message of the text. Acts 24:17 states, Now after many years I came to bring alms to my nation, and offerings. This verse is part of Paul's defense before Felix, the governor of Judea, where he explains his actions and the reasons for his presence in Jerusalem. In this verse, Paul mentions that he returned to Jerusalem after many years to bring alms and offerings to his nation. The Greek word used for nation in this passage is ethnos, which is often translated as Gentile in other contexts. However, in this instance, Paul is clearly referring to his own people, the Israelites, as his nation. If we were to interpret ethnos as Gentile in this verse, it would read, Now after many years I came to bring alms to my Gentile and offerings. This interpretation would be nonsensical, as Paul, a self-identified Israelite, would be claiming to bring alms and offerings to non-Israelite Gentiles, which contradicts his statement and his actions. Instead, Paul's use of ethnos in this verse demonstrates that the term can refer to the Israelite nation, not just non-Israelite peoples. Paul, as a devout Judean and a follower of Christ, had collected alms and offerings from Israelite communities that accepted the Messiah's teaching. Paul supported the Judean believers in Jerusalem as a gesture of unity and love between the two groups within the church. This verse highlights Paul's deep connection to his Judean heritage and his commitment to supporting his fellow Israelites, even as he preached the gospel to the Gentiles. It also demonstrates the importance of interpreting the term ethnos within its proper context, recognizing that it can refer to both Israelite and non-Israelite groups, depending on the specific passage. Furthermore, this verse is part of Paul's larger defense, in which he asserts his innocence and explains that his actions were motivated by his faith in Christ and his desire to serve God. By mentioning his efforts to bring alms and offerings to his nation, Paul emphasizes his ongoing commitment to his Judean roots and his desire to support the Judean believers, even as he embraces his mission to spread the gospel to the scattered lost tribes.